Your workers' council is going to be filled with Reddit mods.
No one will have to worry about their dogs being walked. Cameramen, videographers.
Camera people, Tony. It's 2022.
God damn it, you got me.
International military
You did.
6 months.
shutting
I,
down. The
yeah,
report
so
is the latest in
when
a
we get
series
older,
of warnings the US
Are our kids going to cringe when we mistakenly say cameraman, policeman? Is that going to be like when I hear my grandma talk about colored people?
It's getting that way already, isn't it? I
think so.
notice it. And I'm not even a SJW.
And when you called it out, I was, oh shit, I'm not supposed to say that. I felt it.
Can't even make jokes anymore, Tony.
God. Oh, I'm supposed to start this off with a who dey. Do you know who dey is?
No.
Who dey people going to beat them Bengals? Nobody. Bengals won tonight. They're going to the Super Bowl, I guess, for the first time in a long time. I don't know. My girlfriend is a big fan, and she said she would watch the podcast if I shouted them out at the beginning. So,
Well, I am an Ohio native, so I am vicariously happy for all Bengals fans.
Yeah.
Although I'm from Cleveland, so actually I secretly sort of hate them, but still the state pride, you know.
Yeah, well, I think apparently there's a big a schism between the Bengals and the Browns, I guess, right?
Yeah, because the Bengals, once in a while, they're pretty good, and the Browns are always just terrible.
I think the guy, all right, this is all new to me. The guy that, the Browns were named after a guy, not the color of the water up there.
Sure.
But the guy that founded the Brown of Browns fame actually got into it with the other guy that owned the team with him, moved to Cincinnati, started the Bengals.
Well, then the owner left to Baltimore after that. It's like nobody wants to live in Cleveland anymore, I guess. Probably all the liberal policies. That's probably what it is.
Is that what it is? Is Cleveland a liberal place?
That's why the Rust Belt is collapsing, Tony.
Oh, my God. It's depressing.
You put this on the doc, so I'm assuming you have a really good take on this.
Oh.
Hold on a second.
Well,
Let me play the clip. This has got to be a psyop, right? Well, let's just watch it first.
Is like a good work day. How many hours is a solid work day in your ideal society?
Sure. I mean, I think as much as people want. I mean, I personally work. I have like a 25 hour work weeks, which I think is fairly good. So I would like less work hours.
And what do you do, Doreen?
I'm a dog walker.
A dog walker. Okay.
Yes.
And how?
So
how old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
Sure, I'm 30.
You're 30. Okay. And is there something you want to do besides being a dog walker? Do you aspire to do anything more than dog walking, or is that kind of your pinnacle?
He could be asking the same question of like a homeless person. Like, do you aspire to be anything besides a homeless person, or are you happy being homeless? It's like, what are you talking about, dude?
I love working with dogs.
Sure.
If I had to do this for the rest of my life, I wouldn't be super complaining. Dogs are wonderful animals. But I would love.
Okay, that's enough.
It's just
all right.
It's such easy prey. Yeah. So this is we talked about this a couple times. It was the collapse of the anti-work subreddit.
Now defunct anti-work subreddit. Yeah.
Now defunct. Well, it come back. They shut it down. I don't know. I think they're trying to rebuild it, but yeah. So anti-work subreddit started off. Started off as people just kind of complaining about like predatory business practices, issues with having to work overtime without getting overtime pay, and it kind of become like this, not quite, but kind of left organizing labor organizing subreddit, and it got a lot of attention, and somehow or another one of the mods got picked by Fox News to come on and did a very poor job that kind of crashed the entire subreddit. But I don't know. Basically, I was going to get to is this a psyop? Was this set up?
Oh, is that your thoughts too?
Yeah, that's exactly my thoughts. Now, like certainly Fox News. So the person that they picked, this is a mod. A mod does not run. They don't run the subreddit. They're not a founder. They don't have any power other than kicking people off for not posting relevant stuff or attacking. That's all they can do. Obviously, Fox picked the best person to fit with their narrative of what this subreddit was going to be. You know, how they wanted to make the people on this subreddit out to be. This person is trans. They're apparently autistic. They just kind of chirped back and forth the entire interview. Never made eye contact. I think very obviously had not bathed and was maybe on my level of articulateness. So,
not a good representative. Yeah. Is that what you're saying?
Not a good representative, but obviously they didn't pick the best person. But is it possible that this person was paid as a paid representative? Do we have an agitator here, James?
So what you're saying is
Alex Jones. Was this set up? Did they not just did Fox pick the worst person? I think that's a given. But do you think this person went on there intentionally to crash this subreddit?
To discredit the anti-work subreddit.
To discredit the anti-work subreddit.
Well, this wasn't the whole clip, obviously. At the beginning, Doreen here, she does pretty okay at making sort of a basic point that any leftist would make. Mm. It is almost cartoonish, but I can't imagine that this is intentional. Because the person is a mod on the Reddit, and that's why the Reddit kind of fell apart, is because she was banning all these people for making fun of her. All the Fox News people went to the subreddit and started shit posting. Yeah. She was banning tons of people, and there was a big hullabaloo, but I don't think so, man. I think Fox News knows what they're doing, right? And it's my understanding that some of the other mods had protested against her volunteering to do this. Now, I don't know if that's true or not. That's just what I heard, but
yeah,
I don't think it's a psyop, but it might as well be. I mean, it's just as good as a psyop.
Sure. Yeah, so I mean, this has come up on the subreddit. People talking about, was this person paid because they did such a poor job? And yeah, I'm kind of along your line. Like, you don't have to pay. You don't have to pay to find stupid people on Reddit. Like, there's plenty of them, plenty of
plethora
of social rejects, and people that can't make eye contact in their home bodies and all that stuff. So
yeah.
I don't know. It was kind of funny, and even then, like the whole collapse of the anti-work movement, I think it's definitely overblown. Like, the subreddit went down for a day or so, went private. A lot of stuff got worked out. Nothing really happened. I think the name is kind of bad. I think it has a lot of negative connotations, but I think there's been some new subreddits that have opened up since then that I think embody more of the work reform aspect of where the sub was going. But
I disagree with your take. I think the anti-work subreddit was awesome. I think this is exactly what we need. We need some way to unite the left and also get new people in who aren't particularly political.
Yeah.
And this is how you have to do it, man. You have to find catchy shit that everybody can agree on. Everybody can agree that work is bullshit. So let's get together on that one issue and sort of build something.
Okay,
Fox News just shut it down.
I love anti-work. I think the name could have used a little bit of work.
Sure, yeah.
I think that was kind of my, and people like the Fox News viewers, they're only interested in a surface level take, and
they don't care about the nuance, right?
When you have as your the name of your little group as anti-work, it's almost, I mean, I guess they're going to dismiss it anyways, but something like that, they're just going to dismiss it from the start. My take about this, though, was I feel like these things are almost inevitable with a lot of these grassroots left-wing organizations, where you have like this extreme push for democracy amongst the group, and it leaves the door open for just kind of anybody to rise to the top and become a spokesperson or become a leader. And I'm making an analogy for the Occupy movement. Like I said, I've mentioned on here before, I went to the Occupy protest here in Louisville. This was exactly what it looked like there. You would have, there's all sorts of people that would be up there. Everyone would try to vote, and you would end up having the most sure of themselves person would come to the top, like inevitably. The people that were getting up and speaking, the people that were supposed to be kind of coalescing the demands of the Occupy movement, weren't necessarily intelligent, weren't articulate, weren't well grounded in Marxist theory or anything. They were very sure of themselves, had a very high opinion of themselves, and they were the ones that ended up just coming to the top. And that's what kind of crashed these movements. It's what, in essence, was what crashed anti-work to the extent that it was crashed. Is the left's just what I perceive is the left's inability to really, curtail their democratic urge and submit to some sort of hierarchy.
Interesting. I've heard that same criticism of Zuccotti Park, like the people who shouldn't be speaking are the ones speaking, but you always hear that. It's like, I don't know if like a strong authoritarian figure is what the movement needs. I don't really agree with that. Not my point of view.
I'll be your Stalin.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I said I could do a better job than Doreen here. Put me on Fox News.
Yeah. But actually, and this had been brought up on the subreddit probably like, I don't know, a week or two ago. All these articles started being written about the subreddit and the movement, and somebody kind of come out and they're like, hey, maybe we should designate a media person or kind of coalesce or bring together what this sub is actually about and kind of have it down in writing so that when people start asking for interviews, we can, point them in the direction of a particular person, and that person knows exactly what the point of this whole thing is. And
well, you mentioned democracy, but Doreen wasn't elected. She just volunteered to represent the entire subreddit.
Well, I think, and this was some of what happened there. Everyone was so, at the Occupy protest, everyone was so intent on having everything be just like direct democracy for every little minutia of the movement.
Yeah, baby.
That nothing would get done. And so you would have individuals take it upon themselves to stand up and speak for the group that, didn't have a voice because they couldn't figure out what they were about.
Well, there's nothing you can really do. I mean, you can chant shit and like march around. You can't really do much without getting shot by the fucking police. You know what I mean? It's like, it's cool that everybody gets together for the protests, but just make a showing is the important thing.
Sure. Yeah, I guess the message did get across. Well, with Occupy, it got across, and
there's good speakers out there, man.
Oh, there definitely are. There are some.
You can't work Killer Mike to death,
Yeah, there are some wonderful. All right, that's what we need, Killer Mike, just across the board.
We know you have a family, Killer Mike, but
we need you to speak for our subreddit, buddy.
First, let's look at Hassan's take. I don't know why we're doing this, but
I don't either.
Do you think Russia is morally superior to Western imperialists? No, of course not. It showed clearly in Georgia and Crimea that they are willing to invade. What are you talking about? Bro, Dude, I got motherfuckers living in Georgia right now that I know.
Get fucked.
Okay, I got motherfuckers living in Crimea. They don't care about this issue as much as you do, bro. Or they have a fucking more nuanced approach to this situation than you do. Like, you literally live in Oklahoma and you watch NBC all day and you go, dude, they're going to...
This is it, Paul.
Exert their regional authority and actually fuck...
You're a white person from Oklahoma, therefore your opinion is irrelevant.
Fucking take back certain parts of land and try to rebuild like the Russian Empire or whatever. It's like, what are you saying? No, they don't like getting invaded. Obviously not. And that's ridiculous. But like, you literally, you are making it seem as though this is something that we should have a say over, okay? And as I said yesterday, and it bears repeating, the solution to Ukrainian independence does not revolve around Western imperialist forces helping Ukraine, okay? Just like the solution to Ukrainian independence did not revolve around, I don't know, Nazis helping Ukrainians gain independence against the USSR. These are countries that have incredibly fucking tight relationships with one another, okay? There's a particular reason why you're not hearing...
Hassle.
There's a reason why you're not fucking hearing about Germany's approach to this subject, because they're literally saying, we don't give a fuck, we're not going to do anything, shut the fuck up. And ultimately, what's going to end up happening is like nothing is going to end up happening. Okay, and everybody's going to forget about it. Motherfuckers in Ukraine know this, okay? Because they've been in a holding pattern.
Yeah, I think this is basically what we were talking about, that Hitchens quote a couple weeks ago. It's basically what he was bringing up is the people being anti-U.S. and thinking that means anti-imperialism, or confusing those two positions. Just because the U.S. is imperialist, has been certainly imperialistic, is imperialistic now, but that I guess every action that we would take would be necessarily imperialistic, and therefore it's no better than some other countries' imperialism, and we have to kind of keep our noses and keep our influence and our weapons out of everything. You know, it's an intellectual laziness that's really prevalent on the left. You just kind of hand wave all these things and say, well, we've done stuff in the past, so therefore we're only going to mess it up, or we don't have any standing to step in. And I don't think, I mean, nobody's suggesting we need to send ground troops in, or any troop in, or even, you know, air support, nothing like that. But you know, offering aid to the Ukrainian military, I mean, it's the only thing that's being brought up as far as I'm aware, right?
Well, they're also moving troops to the eastern NATO countries in case of spillover, basically.
Yeah, I think Poland, we're kind of massing some troops on the eastern border of Poland, which I think is like we would be doing anyways. If they're a NATO country, there's going to be potentially hot war breaking out in that area, with the aggressor being a highly militaristic, nuclear capable country led by one badass without a shirt that rides bears around. It's something we should be concerned about. If you don't send troops to support NATO members in a situation like that, what do you send them for?
I wanted to provide a little background to the politics in Ukraine. There are two factions in Ukraine and have been for a long time. One faction of Ukrainians supports joining the EU and, in general, aligning closely with the West. The other faction supports stronger trade relations with Russia, and in general dislikes the idea of aligning with the Western powers. The pro-Western faction lives in Western Ukraine, and the pro-Russian faction lives in the East. Longtime oligarch and pro-Russian politician Viktor Yanukovych was democratically elected in 2010. In 2013, he refused to sign a trade deal with the European Union, instead choosing to take a deal from Russia for billions in loans and closer ties to the Eurasian Economic Union, a trade bloc of former Soviet states. Massive protests swept Ukraine as a result. Protesters occupied government buildings for months. Eventually, Ukrainian secret police started firing live ammunition. 130 people died during the so-called Revolution of Dignity. Viktor Yanukovych eventually fled Russia along with many of his staff after Parliament initiated an impeachment vote in response to the ongoing protests. After that, Russia annexed Ukraine. They followed this up by invading eastern Ukraine and creating two autonomous quasi-states in the pro-Russian Donetsk and Luhansk regions. As they have essentially annexed most of the pro-Russian majority territories in Ukraine, there doesn't seem to be much justification left for further military intervention by Russia outside of pure imperialism. Hassan claims that Putin is threatened by NATO because, quote, the purpose of NATO is to threaten Russian autonomy, which
I don't think it's the point of NATO at all. It never has been to threaten their autonomy. It's to threaten their attempted hegemony, perhaps.
Well, it's a defensive military alliance, purportedly, and it's not a situation where the U.S. comes in and says, hey, join NATO or we're going to sanction you. You know, countries want to join NATO because they're scared of a Russian invasion, and not exactly without purpose. I mean, Russia invaded Georgia. They invaded.
Yeah, and this is something else that that Hassan brought up. That we were antagonizing Russia in this incident by going out there and making or adding Ukraine to our list of NATO allies, or forcing Ukraine to be a NATO ally. And, like you just said, well, no, Ukraine. Actually, I believe it was December 2020 is when Ukraine officially asked to become a NATO member, and this was after February 2020, where Russia had invaded Crimea. So they've got a good reason. They're asking to join this defensive alliance, and so far we haven't even let them. I mean, I don't know how non-antagonistic towards Russia you can be in a situation like that when you have somebody asking to join our defensive alliance, and we're not doing it just to keep from antagonizing Russia.
And like I said, Ukraine is fairly democratic. It's kind of messed up to go in there and just overthrow the government and put in a puppet regime,
Yeah.
The fact that there's always the fact that there's like a large Russian ethnic group in Ukraine, which is like, who cares? It's 2022.
Yeah.
I don't want to hear about ethnicity.
Oh my gosh. So that was Kyle Kalinski's take.
Sorry, I know you're like Kyle.
he's great on a lot of things.
I know.
This is not one of them. And he basically had kind of basically Hassanabi's take, but he kept bringing up the ethnicity of the people that were previous, I guess, the people of Crimea, that they were, these were ethnically Russian people, so they were just being, Russia was just taking that area because these people were, first off, I don't even know what does that mean? They're ethnically Russian. No,
because the original inhabitants of Crimea were displaced under Stalin. They moved out all the ethnic Crimeans and put Russians there.
It's not remotely relevant.
That was like 60 years ago.
Remotely relevant.
80 years ago.
Well, this is wars. He's being an apologist for wars over bloodlines. Yeah. I don't think that's the world we want to live in. We don't want to excuse that kind of behavior at all. And I mean, that can lead down some pretty scary roads if you start, making excuses for that. But, there's a lot of distinction between, I guess, supporting these regimes and not condemning them or making excuses for them. But, effectively there's, the effect it has on the people that are listening to you is not that big of a distinction, or I guess what they would advocate for the U.S. to do, which is, not lend aid to these countries. I don't know. It's just having the same effect, and it's just not good.
What is he claiming that I don't remember him claiming that the foreign aid was the provocation. He was saying the NATO was the provocation, I don't understand that.
Kyle or Haas?
Hassan.
Yeah. So, he was saying that the NATO expansion, that we were not, this, I guess, comes back to what him and Kyle think was a treaty, which was the statement that was made that, NATO would not expand 1 inch to the east of, I think it was Poland. Of course, this is not a treaty. This is something that apparently Gorbachev heard from Mike Baker in the 80s, and it's just kind of gotten thrown around. But there's no such treaty that we're not going to expand any closer. But they feel like this is set in stone, and that any expansion, and it's not expansion. We're not expanding NATO. People, like we just talked about, are asking to join, but they feel like this is antagonistic towards Russia, and that Russia. I don't
understand how. Why wouldn't Russia form their own military alliance instead of invading their neighboring little?
I think that's how they're trying. That's how they
make sense.
Yeah, that's how they form the military alliance, by invading and installing puppet dictators.
That doesn't seem very efficient. It seems like you're going to halfway destroy the country you invade, probably.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean,
they destroyed hundreds of villages in Georgia when they invaded. It's bloody, man. You can't just. invade a country, not expect a ton of civilian casualties, as the United States found out. We should know.
Yeah. Ask us. We definitely know. Yeah, I don't know. I would be more interested. I'd like to be more educated in Russian internal politics and, what exactly they are trying to accomplish and what the justifications in Russia are, kind of the nuance of the conversation going on over there.
It's just nationalism, dude. It's Russian nationalism. We have nationalism everywhere in this world.
Yeah, I mean, if that's what it is, I mean, they're nationalistic to such an extent that in the year 2022, they're posturing to invade not even like some third world country. I mean, Ukraine's a developed country.
Well, Eastern Ukraine's developed because the Soviet Union developed it. And that's sort of, there's a long history. Whenever you talk about the history of the Soviet Union, there's two sides to the story, of course. But that doesn't justify an invasion. It just doesn't make any sense from a leftist point of view. That's what I understand about these fucking tankies, dude. Mm-hmm. Dude, you can't be a Marxist-Leninist and support Putin. It doesn't even make sense. Boris Yeltsin raped the Soviet Union, privatized everything, handed it off to rich capitalists, and named Putin as a successor. How can you support Putin? It's just Russian nationalism. I don't know what else it would be.
It's so I, incidentally, kind of beside the point, I've been listening to some debates with tankies. I really did not know the term until you brought it up however many weeks ago. But I've been listening to some tankies getting debates, and I think they're just contrarians. They're trying to take an edgy position. They think that, well, I'm going to take it a step. These lefties are taking it a step further from the normal, liberal, and I'm going to take it a step further from further from the lefties, and it's just not a very well thought out position. It's so mired in a misunderstanding of theory, which apparently gets brought up so often in these debates.
Well, what does theory have to do with like a
they don't
freaking
know.
Capitalist dictatorship? I don't get it. I don't understand defending Putin at all. They should be trying to overthrow Putin if they're actual Marxist-Leninists, wouldn't they?
One would think. Yeah, one would think.
So as Hassan claims, in the video I watched at least, he claims that Putin is trying to reconquer the former Soviet Republic, and that's bad, but the U.S. should just stay out of it. Okay, maybe, but they've already said that they're going to. They've claimed that they're not going to help Ukraine, right?
Well, we did send lethal aid, which was something he also took issue with the euphemism of lethal aid.
That's just a new term they came up with.
Yeah, it's just weapons, So yeah, we have sent apparently 200,000 pounds or 200 tons, something like that, of lethal aid of weapons to Ukraine to help arm the Ukrainian military. I think there's some concern that this is getting into the hands of like paramilitary groups, which I can't imagine it wouldn't somehow wind up in the hands of some paramilitary groups, but as long as they're pro-Ukrainian and anti-Russian, I mean, I don't know, what's it matter?
Well, but they're neo-Nazis. There were some neo-Nazi groups. There was a news story about it, and apparently the U.S. Refused. They were the dissenting vote in the UN to condemn or to ban the use of foreign aid for neo-Nazi groups or something like that. There's some story about it, which that's not surprising. That sounds like something the U.S. would do. Yeah,
but I mean, just kind of all around, you're going to have pretty distasteful groups. Is the Russian army going to be any better? Is the Ukrainian actual army going to be any better? I mean.
Well, what the U.S. wants is they want another Afghanistan. They want to fund the Mujahideen in Ukraine, which are the fascists, to expel the Russians, maybe, or something like that.
Sure,
make them spend all their money.
If Russia's going to, I guess the idea is try to deter Russia from invading. But if they do, bleed them out there. Get another Mujahideen, another guerrilla war going, and just get stuck in Ukraine like we were stuck in Afghanistan, I guess, and like they were stuck in Afghanistan.
It's just normal geopolitics.
Sure.
Hassan at one point makes the claim that Russia wants access to the Black Sea, which is a dumb point because they have tons of access to the Black. He just doesn't have any point. There's no logical argument to make as to why Russia should be allowed to invade a an autonomous nation. There's just no logical argument. The only thing you can say is, well, the U.S. is bad too, so therefore Russia's good somehow. It just doesn't logically follow.
Yeah.
It's just,
and it's not even, it's, I don't even think he's saying it's okay for them to do that, but he's saying it's just like this ambivalence to the whole idea of it, and that any influence that the U.S. could exert on it, whether through political pressure, economic sanctions, funding, weapons, is, I guess, hypocritical and doomed to failure.
So is the argument we shouldn't send military aid to Ukraine? We should just it cause more harm than not to send aid? Is that the idea?
I'd say that's a part of it, from my understanding.
But see, the problem is Russia is going to go in there and install a fascist dictatorship. Just let that happen to every former Eastern Bloc country?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and I don't know. I mean, it seems like these things, we kind of know that they don't end up going well. Invade Ukraine, who cares? Okay, well, that's people
appease
Ukraine
them.
Care, and appeasement, and then let's appease them again, and
then Poland.
Where does it end? I mean, yeah, this is 2022. We need to build a society that doesn't operate like this. You can't have larger countries annexing smaller ones. You got to keep your imperialism to the economic kind.
Exactly. That's what China's doing. Fuck them.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is why all states are bad.
Yeah.
So just saying.
Yeah. Well, it's progress. It's progress. We're not doing the invasion, colonialism. We're just
have these loans and abolish all of your social programs at the same time.
We're not doing like Christopher Columbus did, where we chop your arm off if you don't bring me the gold.
Have you seen Spaceballs? We're doing where they suck all the air out, except they have like Bezos sucking all the cash out of the earth. Here's okay, buddy Vaush, his take. Because these two takes are sort of the opposing views on this from a leftist point of view.
To explain more, Russia claims that NATO moving eastward is a threat which they have a right to respond to with what they're doing right now with Ukraine. Now, here are some true things, okay? There is no official treaty signed which prevents NATO from moving eastward. There were temporary provisions made which prevented NATO from moving eastward during the time that East Germany was made whole again. But in terms of general behavior of NATO, NATO is not restricted from moving eastward. Additionally, NATO has moved eastward from its initial Cold War locations like 30 years ago. It did this like 30 years ago. Boris Yeltsin acknowledged the movement of NATO without like threatening invasion of Ukraine. And additionally, even if there was a treaty on the books which said NATO cannot move eastward, how is an appropriate response to a broken treaty with NATO to then invade Ukraine? How does that follow? Logically, like, oh, NATO is acting overly aggressive. Let's invade Ukraine.
Yeah, it's a good point he makes here. It's just the logic of it doesn't follow. Yeah. There's no, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's naked imperialism, military imperialism. And this is the problem when you have leftists like Kyle Kalinske and Hassan. They're just, it's just kind of blatant Russian propaganda. You're putting the idea out there that they have, whether or not you're saying it's justified or not, you're putting the idea out there that there is an argument and that, well, this is over. This is a response to U.S. imperialism or NATO or whatever, when it's just,
So now the U.S. can retaliate. So if Putin invades Ukraine, the U.S. can retaliate and invade Mexico. See?
Yeah.
That's the logic.
Yeah, obviously.
There is an argument to be made that NATO presents some sort of threat to Russia in terms of overall military hegemony in the world. And frankly, at least in the days of the USSR, there was a large counterbalance force to the U.S., and now that's not really the case. The closest thing we have is China, which is like a third of the size militarily and not nearly as advanced.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this is the old Warsaw Pact?
It provided a lot of leverage to the left in the United States to have the USSR around, even though they weren't a left-wing country at all, really. But just having an outside threat to the U.S. gave the working class some leverage in this country. And after the fall of the USSR was sort of, it was the Reagan days. Or it was the post-Reagan era, I should say, more accurately. But yeah, sort of the last vestiges of the unions and everything. There wasn't that threat there. There was no outside threat to capital any longer.
That'd be interesting to go into sometime. I guess whether you feel like the existence of the Soviet Union helped to prop up or give validity to leftist movements in places like the U.S.
I don't think the tankies are taking the stance that we should let Russia conquer half of Europe in order to provide a counterbalance to the U.S., though. I don't think that they're playing 4D chess that way. This is the same point that I always make in this when we talk about sort of gray zone Aaron Mate type people, which is the same sort of tanky take that Hassan is taking here on this issue. Two things can both be bad. American imperialism can be bad, and Russian imperialism can be bad, and Chinese imperialism can be bad. Imperialism is just bad from a leftist point of view. You don't have a leg to stand on if you're claiming to be a leftist while simultaneously apologizing for Putin invading Ukraine. Yeah. It's just apologia. It really is.
And I think objectively, military imperialism is worse than economic imperialism, and
you could make the argument for sure.
Yeah, I mean, however bad the economic imperialism is on these countries, generally it is accepted. They ask to bring it in. Now maybe the details of the deal aren't unknown, and obviously it ends up being worse for everybody in the long run. I don't.
Sometimes they'll coup the government and put in a pro-IMF government. Sometimes.
Yeah. But I mean, this is not when it comes to international politics in these big states, nobody is without blame. No one is without sin, and often it is just a lesser of two evils argument. I don't think anybody's pushing for Ukraine to take loans from the IMF and install U.S. friendly people in power, but
there was the Ukrainian Revolution. Ever since then, Ukraine has been fairly democratic, way more democratic than countries in the region in general. Yeah. Basically, a liberal democracy, which it's not the best thing in the world, but it's better than just fascist dictatorship running the country and throwing political opponents in prison.
Yeah. I mean, it's improvement. So. Kind of take what you can get in instances like this. But yeah, I guess they've been moving more just friendly towards Europe and friendly towards the West in general. I think my understanding is mostly because of antagonism from Russia. I guess the closer they align themselves with Europe and the U.S., the more trade relations are normalized between us, and the more likely we would be to sanction and step up and render aid if they were under threat from Russia. So, I mean, this is kind of just a culmination of what's been going on.
I don't know. We'll see. It hasn't happened yet. Maybe it won't happen, but I hope for everybody involved it doesn't happen, frankly, especially the people of Ukraine.
Yeah, no kidding.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you are interested in nootropics, check out my website, MetamaxPerformance.com. We have 10% off for winter sale still going on, so check it out. Get your nootropics while you can. MetamaxPerformance.com.
Gentle listeners, Shire Hemp Farms is your #1 source for CBD and Delta 8 products. Check us out now for wholesale pricing on Delta 8 carts. We have some new Delta 8 in with new American-made carts. Always the lowest price. Check us out. Support local Kentucky farms, local Kentucky businesses. ShireHempFarms.com.
Some of that silky smooth voice.
I was trying to do the NPR. Okay.
So, Tony, what would a future anarchist society look like? Everybody loves Chomsky. You know, he's great, but he wants to abolish everything and not build anything. We need a plan. We need blueprints, so to speak.
Well, we started this episode off with a look at a Reddit mod, and basically I think that it's just going to be a bunch of Reddit mods because those are the only anarchists that I know.
Your workers' council is going to be filled with Reddit mods.
No one will have to worry about their dogs being walked. There will be dog walkers galore, and people that can argue about theory.
More power to her. I could not dog walk. I hate dogs.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to do it either.
So I wanted to talk about parecon this week. This is the anarchist philosophy, it's really economics. This is a blueprint written by these two gentlemen, Michael Albert and Han Hell. Is that his name? Out of Massachusetts, and they went to college in the 60s in Massachusetts, you know, where Chomsky was, and they said basically, hey, Chomsky's great and all, but he doesn't really have any idea as to what comes next. We get rid of capitalism, we abolish the state, get rid of the police and the military, then what? And these guys set out to basically form this economic model. They don't address the political structure really, although there is a participatory political structure blueprint sort of as well by some other authors. We're just going to talk about parecon today, participatory economics. There are three main parts to this, and I'm pretty curious to get your opinion on this stuff because it is sort of different than mainstream sort of council communist crap that you'll hear. It's different than like market socialism. It's fairly unique and can be pretty polarizing. A lot of people have a lot of criticisms of it, so let's check it out here. The first one, BJC, balance job complexes. Albert and Hanhel describe the managerial class as a problem with models like worker cooperatives. And Albert has this example he always uses about the Argentina. I don't know if you know about Argentina. After there was this depression in Argentina, economic depression, a lot of the factories were empty. All the basically managerial class people sort of left the country at the time, and the workers took over the factories, and they have like hundreds and hundreds of co-ops down there now. And this is Michael Albert explaining why the co-ops sort of reverted back to the old ways in the eyes of the workers.
And they talk about doing it and having these ideals that there should be equity and there should be participation and there should be democracy and so on. And in time, having it unravel, having it dissipate, having the momentum diminish, and having the old structures, the old values resurface. And you pursue it further and you discover that when they took over, they did change wages. They did make wages more equitable. And they did make a democratic meeting place where people could vote, one person, one vote. But they kept the old division of labor. Right? And so when people came into that meeting place to vote, some people were highly empowered and confident, and other people were just exhausted from doing debilitating work all day, whereas some people were doing empowering tasks. And the set of people with the empowering tasks would continually dominate the discussion, continually dominate the results. And the exhausted people didn't even want to be there because it was just alienating. And the empowered people didn't want them there.
So basically what Michael Albert here is saying is that in Argentina, the co-ops, because certain people became basically white-collar workers in the facilities, they were the accountants and the sort of white-collar professional people there. They were the ones, although it was democratically ran, the operation was, they sort of ran the place because they were the ones that had access to the information. They were the ones that were knowledgeable and knew everybody, had the contacts as far as shipping and receiving and all that type of stuff.
Sure.
So in a co-op, for example, the managers and accountants are going to be the ones primarily making the decisions. This is called by parecon guys empowering work. The rest of the workers serve only to ratify the decisions made by the empowered workers. And to solve this problem, what they call the corporate division of labor, they introduce the idea of balanced job complexes. So this is a firm would hire people and they would offer jobs that were balanced. And that means doing some empowering work and some disempowering work, or what I would probably call some desirable work and some undesirable work. So what do you think? Make the doctors empty the bedpans for 2 hours, make them sweep the floor for an hour, and then they can do surgery for a couple hours or whatever. Everybody in the facility has a balance.
It seems just incredibly inefficient.
How so?
You have somebody that's skilled in a particular trade. For example, it seems you want to maximize that knowledge, that skill base. Okay, yeah, for a doctor. If you didn't have that much medical care that needed to be done, yeah, if the guy only has to work 20 hours a week, if there's only 20 hours worth of surgeries that needs to be done a week, then sure, let's find something else for him to do. But
you're not increasing the overall amount of surgery that has to be done. What you'd have to do is train more surgeons, and that's one of the points to make with this is you would need to change the education system as well, obviously.
So then maybe have the person part-time train more surgeons if you need more surgeons. The idea of just giving somebody busy work just so it looks fair, it appears fair. I get it to a certain extent, maybe keeps them humble.
Well, it's not about being fair. It's about making sure everybody is empowered when it comes time for the co-op to meet and make decisions on running the company. That's the goal.
So he has to be empowered by helping on a factory line. Part-time, the surgeon, the person that...
No, he's already empowered. He's the surgeon. We're talking about empowering the 80% of the workers at the place, the janitors, and people like the non-skilled labor class.
What is empowering? Because what I'm hearing is we are kind of taking away power, I guess, in this type of language, from the surgeon by making him do menial tasks half of the week, let's say.
Well, I would disagree. He's already empowered. He has access to the information. Sure. He has all the contacts. He is able to vote knowledgeably at the worker co-op meeting.
Yeah, I'm just. What's the point of making him do the menial jobs?
So you can provide surgery. You can provide the empowering tasks to the other 80% of workers
that aren't trained to do that. Or you're going to train.
No, we're going to train more people. Everybody is going to get. They don't have to do empowering work, but when education's free, we're going to have more people trained in empowering tasks.
It seems incredibly inefficient. You've got most of these jobs, the trades that I was in, certainly something like surgery. These are highly skilled trades, and you don't just learn it and then you're a good surgeon for the rest of your life. It's something that you want to specialize in. The more you specialize in it, the more you do it, the more efficient you're going to be at it, and which I think is going to help the community. Having one incredibly efficient person that's doing this nonstop, doing whatever trade it is nonstop. I'll use something I've done in the past, industrial electronics. I could do it 20 hours a week and teach other people that have even less of an understanding and less experience than me in these things, and what you're going to end up having is just a bunch of incredibly inefficient people. Whereas if you let the handful of people that know how to do it, or people that you want to train up in that trade, let them do it and let them just completely focus on it and specialize in it, and then those people are going to be a lot more inefficient than somebody that's just doing it part-time. I mean, this would be my take, and having done trade jobs my entire life, you don't want a part-time guy. You want full-time people. If you want to bring in new people, bring those people in and train them up, and then have them do that job exclusively.
So it's your position that, for example, a skilled tradesman, an electrical engineer, say, working 2 days a week as an electrical engineer and 3 days a week as a non-skilled laborer would be less efficient because they wouldn't be as good at electrical engineering?
Yes, because they're not specializing in it. So one person working 40 hours a week is going to be able to do more work than 10 people that only do the same job, or than 4 people that only do it for 10 hours a week.
how much less efficient do you think it would be?
I mean, it's hard to put a number on it. It would be, it would vary widely by trade. I don't know if it would vary that wildly by trade. I'd say significantly. I mean,
so some jobs are so difficult and skilled that you need to do them every day to stay in practice. Is that the idea?
It's not even to stay in practice. It's you don't learn what I did being an electrical industrial electrician. You don't learn that in 1 year, 2 years. This is something that it takes a decade or more of practice. And even then you have to stay in practice. You have to keep seeing what are the issues that are arising. How do I get past this? What's the most efficient way to deal with X, Y, or Z? I'm sure it's the same way with, something like surgery. You just, practice makes perfect. You don't just learn the trade and then it's learned. It's something that you continuously build on for the entire time that you're in that trade. This is why experience matters. I mean, that's essentially these hours that we're counting are experience on the job. It's why somebody that has worked as an electrician for 30 years is better than somebody that's worked as an electrician for 5 years. They could have went through this exact same schooling. Those extra hours that they put in, whether it's over the course of decades or just over the same year, but this one's working more hours per week, that extra experience matters. You're going to have a more efficient person. His hour is going to be worth more. He's going to get more done in that hour than I would be able to get done in that hour, even though I'm trained in the same trade as him.
Interesting. I'm assuming, I don't know what your opinion would be about the front office, but the white collar workers. I'm not sure that same logic would apply there. They're just doing rote tasks, but a different sort of rote tasks, I would say. But
no, for sure. I think a lot of the I've never worked in the front of an office, but from what I can tell from the people I've known, it's not really that much of a skilled labor thing. There are some jobs you can pick up. If you're working in a factory, let's just say non-trade jobs. I think non-trade jobs anybody can pick up in a relatively short amount of time, and their work would be roughly equivalent to somebody else that had been doing it several years longer. And I say this is somebody that's worked in factory lines, plenty of them over the years. It all comes down to how much there is to learn in the particular job. They're not all created equal. So.
Well, the argument Michael Albert would make here is that people used to say back in the day before the civil rights movement that the reason there weren't black surgeons is because blacks couldn't do it. That's what the surgeons would say, and a lot of the blacks would say it too. Blacks couldn't do it, but of course that's not true. That was just the times. And what Michael Albert says is that's what it is now. The reason we don't have more, the 80% of people he talks about who do unskilled tasks are just as capable. They just haven't had or most of them, a lot of them, enough to make up the difference if we balanced the job complexes, are able to learn these empowering tasks, whatever they might be. And I love the idea just because I like the idea of making the fucking asshole scrub the toilet, right?
Oh, I love it too.
But in general, I like the idea. I don't think this is something pretty far off, though, in my opinion. This is like some The Giver shit, which, I love sci-fi, so.
Actually, it seems like this could, I guess the job doesn't have to necessarily pay more, would be the thing to it. The reward from the white, the reward from the white collar job would be not having to be out in the factory getting your hands dirty and risking physical injury.
So
at that point, you're not going to have any stratification. You're just going to have specialization. I'm fine with specialization.
The criticism Michael Albert makes of the Soviet Union is that that's what happened to the Soviet Union. Basically, you had the professional class running the country, and it created a separate class. And sure, everybody had a vote, but the vote doesn't really matter. The party member tells you what to do, basically.
Well, I think that, in the Soviet instance, the rules might be set out that, hey, we're going to be we're going to do the managerial white collar work. You're going to do this. But these people end up being the one. Well, first off, there was just blatant, rank corruption where people were given those positions for party loyalty reasons, stuff like that. But also, if you're the ones that are going to be making the rules, you're the ones that are given the power to start making the rules. You know, at a certain point, I think it's just kind of human nature. You're going to start changing those rules and writing those rules to be beneficial to you, and you know that's where your stratification starts happening. We're going to make this a little bit easier. We're going to give ourselves a little bit more of a bonus because we're doing the, you know, the important work. We're doing the white collar work and making things move, and
right,
you know.
And we get the brothels on the weekends, and you guys don't.
You get that brothel with the old what's her name, and we get the high class brothel.
Part 2 here, remuneration. So you either get what you get in proportion to what you produce. This is the idea behind socialism, the old socialism and the new socialism, according to Albert and Hanhel here. They see this as unethical because, like property producing wealth being a product of luck, you know, where you're born, who your parents are, what you inherit, they claim that physical and mental capability are also luck. They use this LeBron James example, which I'll play now for us.
So we don't want to reward luck in the genetic lottery. That's one of the hard steps for a lot of people to take, right? So it shouldn't be the case that LeBron James earns $40 million a year.
Yeah.
He doesn't even get his full product, his full contribution to the social product. He doesn't have enough bargaining power. Nike gets some of it. The owner of the team gets some of it. The TV networks get some of it. He doesn't get it all, but he gets a shitload. And way more than most any socialist would think has any relation to reality. And yet he's getting back less than the value of his product. You might not like that so many people like watching him play, but they do. And that's not, you know, you don't get to decide for everybody else what they're. Okay, so not the genetic lottery, but what about the tools lottery? You know, why should you get more because you happen to be using better tools? Because you were lucky in the tools lottery, so to speak. Or
So there's two points here. The first point is that you shouldn't get paid more because of your genetics, how lucky, how tall you are, how good of a basketball player you are, the LeBron James example. And you shouldn't get paid more either because you have better tools. And the way to explain this is to say, you know, if you have a scythe and I have a tractor, but we both do the same amount of work, we both work the same hard. In fact, you'd probably work harder, but I would get paid more because I would have much more product at the end of the workday.
Yeah, it seems like this all just comes down to scarcity. You know, if you have a job that needs to be done, you know, you got 10 people that have a scythe and one guy that has a tractor. You know, if you're in any sort of a market economy and you want it done, I can pay the guy that has a tractor to do my job, do more work for less money, or I guess be more money altogether. I could hire 3 people with scythes for a day, or hire him at 150% their rate for a day, and he'll get done the same amount of work that 3 people would get done. Yeah, I mean, if it's just kind of the market, how that's going to work out with this determining the pay rate for these, or the pay discrepancy.
Well, we're creating a future economy here, somewhere down the road, perfect conditions. We want everything to be fair. That's the whole goal here of parecon. So income, according to Robert and Hanhel, should be based on how long you work, so the hours, how hard you work, intensity, and how undesirable the work is, what they call onerousness. Not on genetics or what tool you happen to have, because all these things are socially owned at this point. All the tools, that means production, all the natural resources, factories, land, so on, including the genetic skills you're born with are part of the social product. So the goal would be, so if you want to make more money, you certainly can. You can work a shittier job. You can work more hours. Or you can work the same job, but in worse conditions, basically. And these would be decided among the workplace, basically, by what he calls worker councils. Each workplace would have a workers' council that would decide all this stuff. What do you think about that idea? Is that the way that work should be paid? How long you work, how hard you work, and how onerous the work is?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know any way that you'd be able to enforce that, though. Like,
well, that's the hard part.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to end up sounding like a libertarian now, but like at a certain point, it's just going to come down to force. Like, okay, well, what if I don't want to do that? Okay, well, what if I want to sell my labor for X? What are you going to stop me? Yeah.
What's a specific example? Because the idea is that all these jobs are balanced. Nobody would take a job that's not balanced in this new economy, for one. For two, the workers' council is the one deciding, rating these things, how onerous it is, how undesirable it is, and you could do that just by polling people, I guess, on each particular job. How shitty do you think this job is, according to everybody, and then collectively they could determine what should be paid for these particular jobs.
Yeah, we kind of do something like this already with prevailing wages. If you've ever worked a government job, it's essentially what this is. I mean, I'm sure that their idea is a lot more in depth, a lot more stringent. But if you work as a laborer on a government job at prevailing wage, you're going to get like $30 an hour. If you work as a pipe fitter, got a friend of mine, you know him. He's working as a pipe fitter right now on a federal job, and he makes $62 an hour. Regardless of how long you've been with the company, that's how much you make. If you're going to work overtime, this is how much you're going to make. And they kind of break it down by trade like that.
Is that a minimum, or is that
that's what you make? That's what you make.
Interesting.
You could
that sounds like socialism, Tony.
Yeah. Turns out the federal labor market is pretty socialist. Yeah, I have a feeling that what you're going to, unless you have some force behind this movement, I mean, that's just what it's going to devolve into. You're going to have a lot of people follow the rules, and then one person start breaking the rules. Not breaking the rules, but just setting up their own workers' council where they can twist things a little bit. If everybody else is doing pipe fitter work at $50 an hour, well, I'm going to start a company. I'm going to start doing it for $45.
It's hard to envision the idea here because we haven't got to economic coordination yet, how everything is allocated. So economic coordination, how are resources allocated?
You showed us the social costs and the preliminary estimates of social costs.
I won't bore you with a handheld sort of rambling about this because it's very difficult to explain, and prices are announced by the IFB. This is the Iteration Facilitation Board. This could also be done with computer algorithms in a sort of decentralized AI planned economy. So prices are announced by the IFB. Proposals are made by the consumers' councils and the workers' councils. The workers' councils propose what they want to produce for the year, so their inputs and outputs are proposed. The consumer councils propose their consumption, and that consumption again is along with how their work output, basically the social product it's called. So these two proposals are not going to match, obviously. They iterate at the Iteration Facilitation Board, back and forth until they come to a tacit agreement, and the plans can change throughout the year. Also, this is all, they've worked all this out in economics. Handhell's an economist, and they've done simulations, and they say it works. So what do you think? What's the worst that could happen, Tony?
Yeah.
Iteration Facilitation Board.
Yeah, that sounds not threatening.
Nothing
at all.
like the Politburo, does it?
Yeah, nothing threatening about that at all. I think these things are great. I love when little experiments in alternate economies and alternate political organizations occur. Anytime you're trying to make things more equitable, it's a noble goal at the very least.